So Halloween is pretty much a franchise that for me goes back to my sort of childhood, from about the age of 12 onwards really. I was allowed to watch a lot of horror films as a kid. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. Certainly didn't do me any harm, but Halloween was one big one for me. Lucky for me, I only saw the first one when I was young. It's only in the last decade that I've actually gone back and watched all the sequels. I was kind of warned off it. Now, depending on what you like, you're going to get certain different things from all the Halloween movies, but I would definitely recommend, if you haven't seen any of them, definitely watch the first one. To be honest, I find it hard to believe that anyone hasn't seen the first film, so it's kind of a redundant issue. But maybe you haven't seen the sequels. It does get very confusing, and I spoke about this last year in a full video. This is just an intro here. I'm going to talk about the future of these movies in a minute, but basically there are, from what I can kind of get my head around, 5 different movie universes in this film franchise as a whole, including remakes. It gets very complicated. I can't really do it as a voiceover, so I'll just kind of show you when I come back with the camera exactly how that works. But effectively, you have the first 2 movies that were the better ones. John Carpenter didn't direct the second one, but he wrote it, and it was kind of a rush job, and it shows. But it was acceptable. The third one, a lot of people just don't like because it didn't have Michael Myers in it. That's the main reason they don't like that film. Kind of stupid, really, but it isn't great anyway. Beyond that, it's not a great film. 4, 5, and 6 really go downhill. They're kind of their own self-contained trilogy in some ways. And then you've got a 7th and an 8th film, which came out in the late 90s, early 2000s. Then you've got the remakes that Rob Zombie did. There's a 1 and 2. And as of last year, they brought the franchise back, kind of a soft reboot, and it just gets really complicated. But pretty good. I mean, the main character in this obviously is Michael Myers, and also Dr. Loomis, played by Donald Pleasance, and he's great in all the movies that he's in. It's just a shame that the movies that he's in a lot of ways, some of them are pretty terrible. In fact, a lot of them are. So I wouldn't waste your time with some of the later movies in the franchise. Certainly, Halloween Resurrection was awful. It was terrible. But anyway, that's Halloween Resurrection. Let's talk about the future of the franchise and what has come so far in terms of the movie universe itself. Because there's many of them, there's many universes. Let's explain. So here are all the Halloween movies in production order now. Just to explain, there might be 2 versions of this review that I'm doing. If YouTube allows me to use some of the footage in a limited capacity, you'll have just watched a 3-minute intro. If they're not going to allow that, this will be the beginning of the video. So if that's the case, welcome. So basically, these are the Halloween movies in production order. These are all the movies, including all remakes and sequels and reboots and so on and so forth. Now, what you're looking at here is not a movie universe. What you're looking at here is 5 movie universes, bizarrely. I only just got my head around this. It's mental. In contrast, let's talk about another movie universe, a very popular one that you might be familiar with, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Whether or not you like it, that's irrelevant, but for the purpose of this analysis, this is the Marvel Cinematic Universe, beginning from Iron Man up till Avengers Endgame that came out this year. So it's a self-contained movie universe. It is what it is. It's all in continuity, and those are the films in production order. Nothing is left out as non-canon or anything like that. There's no spin-offs or remakes. It's all straightforward. Halloween, on the other hand, we have 5 movie universes, and let's just explain this very carefully. So obviously, I'm going to try and zoom through this, so apologies if I'm going too fast. The first film was Halloween 1978, understandable. It had a sequel, Halloween 2. The third film, so this is the first of the 5 movie universes. The third film was its own movie. Not only does it not have Michael Myers in, that's kind of weird enough, I understand what they were doing, but in this film, somebody's watching the first Halloween movie on TV. So this movie isn't even in any way canon. They went out of the way to say that this movie isn't even set in the same movie universe. So the first movie universe, obviously, is the Halloween movies onwards. The second movie universe would be Halloween 3 in isolation, just on its own. But the first movie universe kind of continued after that. So that was followed by the fourth, fifth, and sixth films. So that's your first movie universe in its entirety. After the sixth film, the seventh film was Halloween H2O, but one problem. In the fourth film, they killed off Jamie Lee Curtis's character Laurie Strode off screen. So when they did this, it was basically retconning everything from, well, number 3 onwards. Obviously, number 3 is its own kind of self-contained movie, but including 4, 5, and 6, it basically undid those. So those films no longer count for the movie universe. So the first movie universe was that. That was erased by the third movie universe with Halloween H2O. So let's get rid of those films there and talk about the third movie universe, which was Halloween 1, 2, H2O, which was the seventh film, and the eighth film was Halloween Resurrection, which was terrible. But there you go. So that's your third movie universe. The next film to be made was a remake in a traditional sense. It was a Rob Zombie remake, so that's 1 and 2. That's your fourth movie universe because it's not set in canon with anything else that's come out. And then the ninth film, is it the ninth? No, it'd be like the 11th film, I think, at this point, was Halloween, which again brings back Jamie Lee Curtis, who unfortunately was killed on screen in Halloween Resurrection, which was terrible. And this undoes everything from number 2 onwards. They go out of their way in this to erase everything and do a proper job of a Halloween sequel. So this is the fifth movie universe. Very complicated anyway. So beyond this, they are continuing this movie universe. So let's have a bit of blank space here for films that will be coming in a few years. Halloween Kills, which is out in October 2020, and Halloween Ends, which is in October 2021. Let's talk about that now with the core.
Takes a few seconds for the picture quality and the audio to come in, so I think we're recording now anyway. So yeah, today, 30th of October, when this goes out, we're going to be talking about Halloween. This is the second to last video. The core returned.
Yeah, well, I'm a big fan. I love Jason Voorhees.
Yes, obviously, Friday the 13th franchise. That's a different, but yeah. So, well, to be fair, I mean, that was kind of like, it always felt like it was a poor man's version of Halloween. They never really managed to recapture the magic with that first film until maybe the last film that came out last year, possibly. The others just felt like sort of like you typically get with sequels, just poor man's versions of what came before. And Friday the 13th felt a little bit that way.
Yeah,
But,
which is kind of interesting that with Halloween they have decided to reboot, and in some ways there is a bit like a stigma attached to that, but in some ways I do think there are some film franchises that kind of need it.
Yeah.
It doesn't always work, but sometimes you've got to chuck out all the bullshit you've had.
Yeah, and sometimes historically speaking, when they've done that, it's not actually been for the better, because what they did it with Superman, didn't they, with Superman Returns, and pretty much retconned the other films. They ended up making a worse film, for argument's sake, anyway, than the ones that they were retconning. Sure, there's other examples as well. But with this, I mean, I liked Halloween 2, the original Halloween 2, but it wasn't as good as the first one. I think the last one was so good, it managed to think, yeah, well, we can forgive getting rid of Halloween 2 for that reason, because you haven't seen the latest Halloween film, have you?
No, I've never been a massive fan of the Halloween films, hence the joke of getting it mixed up with Friday the 13th. But no, I mean, I like the first film and the sequel, yeah.
I'd say give it a watch, but purpose of this video, we're just going to talk about the future of this franchise, because I think 2 years ago when they announced the Halloween 2018 film, this is obviously 2017, we did a video and we were a bit skeptical about it, but similar sort of thing here, really. I'm not skeptical after having seen the last film, but there's some interesting facts to it, because basically, spoiler alert, in the last film that came out, obviously it has Jamie Lee Curtis' character Laurie Strode. There's not a lot of other recurring characters from the previous films, though. Whereas this next film that's coming out in a year's time, called Halloween Kills, it's bringing back some characters from that original film that they haven't brought back before, at least with the same actors. For example, you might remember the sheriff that is going around with the Donald Pleasance, the Loomis character. He's played by Charles Cyphers. He was in a few John Carpenter films. He's back playing the same character. I don't. There's a photograph of him on set, and he's wearing. Some people have said, "Oh, he's the sheriff still." It's like, no, he's like 80 odd, and he's dressed more like a security guard. There's some theory that he's going to be security guard at the hospital because the Haddonfield Memorial Hospital, I think it is going to be in this. So he might be working there. For context, his daughter, was it Nancy, I think she was called, or was that the actress's name? I can't remember. The first one, the one that gets killed in the car, that was his character's daughter, and you didn't see his reaction to his daughter getting killed or anything in that first film. So whether or not they're going to go somewhere with that, they obviously lost his daughter to The Shape back in that original film. But interestingly, I don't know if you know who Anthony Michael Hall is, the actor. You've probably seen him in stuff, but you wouldn't remember him. He was in like The Breakfast Club and Edward Scissorhands.
I'm the name forgetting motherfucker, so...
Exactly, could be talking about Channing Tatum for all you know, and you'd get them confused.
I won't have a clue.
But Anthony Michael Hall's going to be in this, and he's playing Tommy Doyle, and Tommy Doyle was the little boy that Jamie Lee Curtis was babysitting for. You might remember they brought that character back in Halloween 6, and he was played by, you might remember this, but he was played by Paul Rudd, Ant-Man. That was one of his first film roles back in 95. Obviously, that's retcon, so that's irrelevant, but they're bringing him back. Obviously, wasn't played by...
weird shit did happen when they started messing around with time in Infinity War. Wait, no! Damn it.
Exactly. But the Anthony Michael Hall character, Tommy Doyle, he didn't play him in the original film when he was a little boy. But he's a fairly big name actor, he's Anthony Michael Hall. But the girl that played Lindsay, that was the little girl, because you remember at the end of the first one, there's the little boy and little girl in the house. Yeah. The actress that played her is in this as the same character. And also, let's have a look who else was coming back from the original film. I think that was it from what I can gather. But I'm wondering if there's going to be an aspect of this that Michael Myers is going after the ones that got away, because obviously they tried to go with Halloween 2 onwards. It was like, oh, it was his sister and it was family, and that was why he was doing it. I think in this one it's more about maybe he's tying up loose ends, which is why it's got these recurring characters from the originals. The woman Marion Chambers, that was the woman that was with Loomis in the car when Michael Myers escapes. You know, where you see him jumping over the car and he like grabs his hand through the seat at the beginning of the first.
A nurse or something.
Yeah, she's in it. She was in Halloween H2O. I think she got killed as well, but obviously that's irrelevant and retconned.
Yeah.
But her character played by the same actress. And neither was another one that was coming back. But again, that's another character that he went for that escaped from him, so maybe there's some aspect of that in this. One thing I like about this franchise and the way it's going as well, and this was evident from the opening scene in the last one that they did, there's an almost Lovecraftian kind of thing where it's the big boogeyman who's going to stab you. It's more just encountering him seems to be like a bigger thing, because he seems to affect everybody that he comes across. Obviously, Laurie Strode majorly, because she's had like a massive like nervous breakdown after the first film. But everyone else, including the mental patients at the hospital, the asylum where he is in the last film they did, because when he goes mental, when they put the mask, you pretty trailer where they get the old mask out and they hold it up to him, and all the other like inmates are like, you know, howling and shit in reaction to him. They're not reacting to the mask, they're reacting to his like craziness. And what he seems to put that off to everybody, include this spoiler alert, but in the last film there was a doctor that took over after Dr. Loomis, and he was kind of his like protege. He himself is a bad guy, he's crazy, of having been exposed to Michael Myers, and there's some hint at the end of the last one that Laurie Strode's granddaughter, who's like 17 or whatever in this film, she's now inherited some like insanity. There's like a hint of it. So I don't know if they're going to go there. But it kind of works because, like I say, you've got a different element I don't think they've really done before, this offshoot. But I'm going to preface this video, I'm going to edit it all together, and people who are watching this will have already sat through it all. But I was going to talk about there's basically 5 different Halloween movie universes you can follow. There's the first two films, and then 4, 5, and 6. There's film number 3 on its own, which is completely isolated. There's then that's 2 universes. The third universe is Halloween 1 and 2, then leaps to H2O and Resurrection, because they retconned what came before. That's the third universe. The fourth universe is the remake universe with Rob Zombie, and their fifth universe now is this one that's just basically number 1 and then last year's film and whatever they do since. That's 5 like universes basically. It is almost like Thanos has like somehow caused
that. It's getting a bit Crisis on Infinite Earths. Like, Jesus Christ, we're gonna have all the different Michaels fighting.
Yeah. So it is a bit of a dilemma. If you are a fan of these films or some of these films and not all of them, like how do you watch them all? Because you can't really watch all of them. Well, you could, but it's a bit of a head fuck. So yeah, it's interesting, and obviously it's a trilogy, and this next one's called Halloween Kills, which is a pretty terrible name, and then Halloween Ends, which is in 2021. But it made a load of money, so the 2018 film. So, well,
as long as it doesn't have Rapstar showing up going trick or treat, motherfucker, I'm quite happy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That was terrible. That is, I'm not even exaggerating. I've said this in a few videos. That's one of the worst films I've ever seen. Halloween Resurrection, just terrible on so many levels. But there you go. I didn't mind Busta Rhymes as a rapper as well. Well, he wasn't one of my favorites, but I didn't mind him. But it was just like, is that really where this franchise has gone? Well, we'll cut it short there anyway. That's like some of the stuff. There's a load of other information. There's a lot of stuff about him having a burnt mask in the upcoming film, because the end of the last film he's basically like burns. There's possibly going to be a lot of flashbacks in this film, possibly flashbacks to the 70s film with Tommy Doyle, the little boy. Because in that first film, Michael Myers does actually stalk him specifically to start with. He's following him around. Oh yeah, also there's going to be a character that played one of the bullies as well at school, when they're saying Boogeyman's going to get you. I don't think they're bringing back an actor for that, but one of those characters in this as well. I don't know if it's the one that runs into Michael Myers, but if it is, again, it might just be that tying up loose ends thing where he's obsessed with, anyone he's like stalked or encountered, he has to kill them kind of thing.
I suppose it's one way to do it, because that was one of the problems with H2O. It kind of turned into, okay, it was kind of effective in the first film where he stalks you but doesn't necessarily, kill you. But it got a bit tedious in by the time of H2O. It's like, oh, he's in the stall, and he hasn't killed anybody. It's like, okay, this is kind of getting boring now. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, there's a lot of jump scares. But I have to cut it short here because this video is going to be real long, because I've got other stuff to add to it. But so we'll come back tomorrow for Halloween itself. And what are we going to talk about tomorrow? Is any clues as to what we're going to cover? Maybe.
I don't know. I feel we need to kind of fiddle around with something. Maybe we've got a box or something I could play with. I'm pretty sure it's going to be fine. No problems.
Essentially, yeah. Well, we've been teasing Hellraiser. It might not be Hellraiser, but we have been teasing it. If not this year, maybe next year. But come back tomorrow anyway, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much. I just need to stop recording.